Hi, my name is Barrington Miller, Director of Issuer Engagement at the Canadian Securities Exchange. And today I'm here with Klee Irwin, founder, CEO, everything to do with Irwin Naturals, as well as some other companies, which we're going to find a little bit about. But the main reason we're here, usually we do a newly listed clip, but this company's been on our exchange for a little bit, and it's time for you to get to know Klee Irwin and Irwin Naturals. Klee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Barrington.
So let's do a little bit of background right now. Could you tell our audience who you are? Because I know who you are, and I know Irwin Naturals, and you've been around for
28 years.
I say 30?
Yep, getting up there. 28 years that we started, I think, in 1994.
Oh, beautiful. So yeah, I'll let you talk a little bit about your background and how you got to be here.
Sure. Yeah, we founded Irwin Naturals in 1994, and the sector of functional vitamins, minerals, herbal formulas was starting to explode at that time because President Clinton had just signed into law the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which for the first time allowed people who make complicated herbal formulas like ours that provide alternatives to some of the more synthetic or even pharmaceutical type products. Our products don't treat specifically disease conditions, but it does offer an alternative to lots of other things, such as certain conditions of menopause, prostate health, immune support, right? So we call these nutraceuticals. Okay, it's an industry term, or you can think of them as functional formulas made with herbs and minerals and things like that, versus just nutritional supplementation like you would have with your multivitamin or your vitamin C. So anyway, we, over the 28 years, eventually became perhaps the biggest or one of the biggest brands in the specialty nutraceutical category, right? Versus just regular, vitamins like vitamin E or vitamin C. And I think nowadays in Canada and in the United States, we have a familiarity of about 80% of Canadian and US households would be familiar with our brand. So that's pretty good. We've got a high ranking on Trustpilot and Amazon of about 4.6 out of 5 stars. So not bad. So a lot of people know about the brand and a lot of people like the brand. And then we decided in kind of recent years to dive into 2 emerging disruptive categories. So one category is mental health. So the mental health industry is $1.5 trillion. And the other industry is marijuana, cannabis, and that is about a $100 billion industry. And so in any event, how would we jump into those spaces and why, and what is the business thesis? Well, if you take our company over the 28 years, it's been anomalously profitable. In other words, we've never lost money. So we're on a 28-year consecutive run of nonstop profitability, which is unusual for CPG companies. But the company was not what I would call a growth company, because over the 28 years, we've essentially probably averaged a CAGR of 15% per year. And so, for example, last year, our EBITDA was about $12 million on about 135 million in top line sales and some lesser amount of net sales after returns. But we planned about 2 years ago to go into these vertically growing disruptive spaces of marijuana and mental health, particularly psychedelic mental health. And we didn't want to lose money, right? Like virtually all of the other psychedelic and cannabis stocks lose money.
Virtually all of them. Yes.
I'm not aware of one that makes money, so just trying to cover my butt by saying virtual, but you probably observe these things as well, and you're probably right.
Yeah, it's been a tough road. So.
Yes. So and so we can get into that. I mean, I'd like to dive into that, but you asked me a little bit about myself, and then I started telling you about my company, which gives you a picture of how much I identify the company with myself. I mean, the company's called Irwin Naturals, and I'm Klee Irwin. So it is, you know, and I'm very passionate and visionary about, you know, our mission, which is to heal the world with plant medicine. That sounds very flowery, but I feel it in my heart. You know, I'm authentic about that belief. But about myself, for the last 12 years, I've been the scientific director of quantum gravity research, and we've got about 70 papers, you know, mostly peer-reviewed journals in mathematical physics, where we unify the theories of space and time, which is general relativity, with the theory of everything else, which is quantum mechanics, and that's what I do. You could call it my side gig, right? But so we've got all these PhD mathematicians and physicists that work under me, and it's at a different location than Irwin Naturals. So, so I'm the CEO of Irwin Naturals, and I'm the kind of the director of quantum gravity research, and that's a strange mashup, but they're both scientifically oriented things. So the way I look at physics and reality itself is mathematically, in a sense, and the way I look at business is also mathematical. I see how money flows. I see deltas, you know, between, you know, what I buy something for versus what I sell it for, versus finding that ultimate sweet spot where you don't want to take too much profit, because then you're raising your retail prices and that'll depress your velocity, and you don't want to take too low, right? Because then you'll make less. So dialing in, you know, all those analytics and ways of thinking is to me what business is about. But then as I'm getting older, I've become even more passionate about service to society. And so I started thinking, well, this is a couple of very brief 2, 3, 4 years ago. How can I use this household name brand that we have, Irwin Naturals, to help with, first I'll speak to the mental health crisis. So about 1 out of 4 Canadians and Americans have a mental disorder. You wouldn't think it's that high, and that's because people keep their mental disorders to themselves. But we are now at 25% of adults with a diagnosable mental disorder. And it wasn't always like that. And it's a growing trend, and it's called the mental health crisis, and it's getting very scary. I was invited last month to Davos to speak on the global mental health crisis and how psychedelics can impact that. So the backstory on psychedelics is that the old school treatments, such as a lifetime prescription to Prozac and $900 a month psychiatric visits, okay, that band-aids a lot of problems or manages them at best. And so there's about a 17% effectiveness rate typically on a lot of the pharmaceutical and talk therapy oriented treatments. So that 17% is not good enough for an escalating mental health crisis that has brought us up to 25% of adults. So then you contrast that with all of these new peer-reviewed clinical studies on how psychedelics are impacting the same mental issues. And oh my God, Barrington, you are seeing numbers like 80%, 75%. And you're talking about treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, anxiety, sleep disorders, addiction disorders, and so on. And as a scientist, you look at that, you hear about that, and you say BS, right? Sounds like hype.
Right.
Then you crack open your first peer review paper and you say, well, that's a fluke. I'm a scientist, so let me look at 10 more. And by the time you look at 10 more, you're really surprised. Like, how do you have a breakthrough disruptive treatment that can be up to 80% effective when the status quo best we have other than that is like 17? So we wanted to dive in at Irwin Naturals and lend the credibility of our brand, the fame, really, if you will, of the brand, to help validate and accelerate the mainstreaming of psychedelic mental health, because people are dying, veterans are committing suicide, people's lives are being ruined. And so we're diving in through the only legal way that we can currently do that. Because when you hear about psilocybin-based drugs that are being worked on, like, for example, Compass Pathways, Atai, a lot of companies with really large market caps, and they're exciting because when they eventually get those pharmaceuticals based on these molecules, these psychedelic molecules approved, then they will be used and to great help. But right now, how do we dive in as a company and start healing the public and providing outsized returns for our shareholders? So I'll let you dive in, Barrington. I've talked.
There's so much I want to get into, and it's apologies to the audience in advance if we're scattered, but I'm sorry, it's too exciting. I want to go back earlier when you were talking about the formation of Irwin Naturals.
Yes.
And of course, President Bill Clinton, who was my president growing up in university. He actually spoke at our graduation, so that was.
Oh, no kidding! That's pretty cool.
Security was tight. Let me tell you that. So you must have butted heads against the other scientific community members because of your treatments and because they were in that category of nutraceuticals versus the other treatments that were available and out there. Like, how did you overcome that?
We didn't really butt heads. Let me tell you, I was lucky. Okay, I'm a pretty good CEO in terms of being able to run a business without losing money and growing and doing what we did. But I can't take all the credit. I got lucky. I was 27 years old, and I think so. I think I'm 56 now, so I must have been about 27 in 1994. But I kind of saw the writing on the wall. What was going on at that time is you were starting to see the early stages of the emergence of the modern nutraceutical business in Canada and the US. And this was before the rest of the world was catching on. And what I mean by that is, obviously, for years, of course, before that, before you and I were born, right, there were vitamins, especially after World War II. And there were Fred Flintstone's vitamins for kids in the 70s.
Klee, get out of my head. That's the first thing. Loved it.
And Americans were learning to take vitamin C and vitamin E, and they were learning about these things back then. But that's not nutraceuticals. At the same time, there were these health food stores back in 1994. So this was kind of before Whole Foods was Whole Foods, right? A global chain. And so these herbal formulas, like in China, for example, right? People have been using herbal medicine to great avail for millennia.
Types of roots.
So these products were out there, but the problem was the law did not allow the people who marketed these products to say Well, this formula supports the immune system. Okay. That's called a structure function claim. All you could say before 1994 is, vitamin C is recommended by, by the government to take in 60 milligrams a day, or things like that. It was about food supplementation for people not getting the proper things in their diet, the food that they're eating. So then you supplement, like you're not giving your kids good breakfast, so you give them a multivitamin. That was the way it was, and yet everybody knew from Chinese medicine. I mean, this was 1994 we're talking about, not 1934. So by 1994, yes, Americans were and articles in magazines under freedom of press were definitely explaining, the internet wasn't quite there yet in 1994 in terms of the public, but there were books and there was magazines, and everybody was getting the news that you could start using these herbal, medicines. Now, by medicine, I'm not saying it's a disease treatment, but the way indigenous people call plant medicine, right, and herbs medicine. So what was holding the industry back from exploding was the ability to just speak truth and to say, well, no, this mix of 5 herbs does support the immune system. It's not just for supplementing your diet if you're eating bad meals. And when that was signed on Clinton's desk, we as an industry were able to explode at that point. And nutraceuticals went mainstream, and you saw the cover of Newsweek magazine talking about how melatonin helps you sleep, right? And it just exploded. So I was just there for the explosion at the right place in history. And because I am good at formulating, I've always been geeky, so I was formulating back in those days. I'm good at art, and I was doing the package design, and I'm good at writing and language. So I was writing the copy and the brochures, and we ended up putting a product into the market that just worked a bit better than the average bear. It looked better packaging wise, and we communicated better because it was a nascent industry at that point. So I kind of just charged ahead and had some natural abilities. And we basically got a foothold and never looked back, and we just kept growing every year. And now there are plenty of competitors who are as good as me or better than me, right, at those 3 things. But we made the Coca-Cola first mover advantage, which is a lot of what I want to talk to you about when you ask me about cannabis and psychedelics. I got a taste of blood in my mouth, if you will, a realization, oh my God, if you're ever lucky enough to be on the right side of history and have the Coca-Cola first mover advantage because you were just there at the right time, it's very hard for the competition to catch the Coca-Cola first mover once they get that big lead.
You had a running start.
Yeah,
Definitely had a running start. Well, the Canadian Securities Exchange has definitely been known to be host to a number of cannabis issuers. I think we're around between 70 and 80 that are
nice.
US based and have US assets and interests, close to 200 in total. So we've been sort of first mover advantage in the capital market space.
No doubt.
And the ability to connect the investor with the company, and of course the companies to grow and expand and help the industry and all of those things, which you can find on many videos on CSE TV, which is on YouTube, as well as www.thecse.com. That's my plug.